afternoon once again, and welcome to I Am Network. This is round 5 of our series, which started a few months ago. And for those of you who have been asked since the beginning, you remember that we started talking about how to communicate with clarity and confidence. We had a 3-part series on that. And after that, we jumped into finance. We had a very good discussion on financial management and also looked at insurance policies and how to secure our future investments. We will also put in the chat box our YouTube channels for any of you who missed those sessions. And also, like Joanne said, feel free to share with your friends, because this is actually a network to support the young and the young at heart. So we believe that many of us need mentors. We're not claiming to be experts in everything we do, but we're just sharing our skills and hope that you will also be able to learn something from our session today. So for today's session, we are very happy to be hosting Mr. Donald Bosire, who is one of the co-curators of Engage Kenya, which is a public speaking forum where people come to share their stories. And before COVID, we would actually meet and share the stories face to face. But now you can follow Engage Kenya on social media. They're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and we're very happy to be here with him today because he also inspires many of us with respect to leadership. So before I start, I will also introduce my co-host, Joanne Kabiru, who is one of our co-founders. Welcome, Joanne.
Thank you, Akacho.
We also started with Paloma Gatabaki, who is not with us, but I Am Network started based on the principle of 3 ladies who wanted to set up an online mentorship forum. So for those who ask whether it's for ladies only, no, we are gender balanced, and we came up with this vision to support the youth, and we're happy to be working with people who are also passionate about the youth. So I will start off, and then we shall have a Q&A session once Dawn comes on. Thank you. My name is Akacho Kirapa, and our topic today is leadership in action. So as we kick off, does anybody identify any of the leaders in either of the photos? You can unmute your mic. You can either tell me if you know the company, maybe if you don't know the name. But I'm sure some of us are familiar with these photos.
I'm guessing here, I think he owns Fubu.
Which one?
This guy.
The first one.
Mic. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's one of the co-founders of Fubu, which is one of the largest sports companies and sports design in America. And some of you may also know him from the Shark Tank. And his name is Damon John. He's one of the sharks. So I think why Damon also draws us to himself is because of his confidence. If you look at the way he dresses, I also follow him on LinkedIn because he's quite an inspirational leader and has very motivational quotes. So whenever you need somebody to kickstart your day, he's a very good source of inspiration. Could I have a volunteer for the second photo? Who do you think is the leader here? Even if you don't know the name, You can just tell me, is it the gentleman sitting down, the one standing up, or the lady?
The lady, and I think she started, is it a travel company or something to do with travel that is quite big?
Okay, well done. She's called Jihan Abbas, and she's one of the youngest founders of a digital car insurance company in Kenya called Griffin. And you'll not believe she started when she was 26 years old. So you can see she's breaking all the gender stereotypes and even age. Because most people who would look at this might assume the older men were the bosses. So what is a leader? I will borrow from a famous author called John Maxwell, who tells us that being a great leader is about having a genuine willingness and a true commitment to lead others, to achieve a common vision and goals through positive influence. We're also reminded that no leader can ever achieve anything great or long-lasting all alone. So what I want us to pick out from all this is, for any leader to be successful, you have to walk towards a common vision. And leadership is not about being the only person in front or being the only person getting the glory, but you have to share it with other people. So I would like, Joanne, please project the poll. We want to find out how many here believe that leaders are born and how many believe that leaders are made. I'll give you 10 seconds.
We have for a minute or so.
We've had that leaders are born, others believe that leaders are made.
We're almost there.
So what do you believe as a person? Okay, I'll give you 10 more seconds and then we'll close the poll.
So we have a comment about it being both options. So that will be number 7.
We just want to know what you believe. Yeah, so just choose one.
All right. Closing in the next 10 seconds. Poll is closing in the next 10 seconds. Do you believe that a leader is born or not? We have a new visitor. Wambui, karibu sana. Wambui? Okay.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so closing the poll now.
Okay, thank you.
And there are the results.
So most people believe leaders are made. Okay. So I looked at a study from Harvard Business Review where they interviewed many top leaders around the world. And all these leaders were asked to rate what they consider to be top leadership qualities. So if you look at the column on the left, it shows that leadership competencies can be grouped into 5 themes. And these are connection and belonging. Another one is nurturing growth. The third one is efficient learning. Number 4 is self-organizing. And the last one is strong ethics and safety. So out of these groups, they were now asked to expound on which of the groups they consider to be the top rating. And interestingly, the one down here on strong ethics and safety emerged the top, where almost 67% of them responded that a great leader should have high ethical and moral standards. Next in line, the leader should also be somebody who can organize themselves. And by that, they meant the leader should be able to provide goals and objectives, but also be flexible and not be too rigid. And this was also feeding into what also their team members had given as feedback. In line with being someone who is self-organized, they also have to clearly communicate their expectations. So what the study found was in the teams that leaders who were not communicating clearly did not score very highly with their teams. And then the next competency on efficient learning highlighted that teams where people learned much more efficiently had a leader who was also flexible and was also willing to work and change his opinion, and he or she was not very rigid in their approach. So if we look at the last two, which look more at nurturing growth and connection, these were responded to people who talked about leaders who are committed to training of their employees or their subordinates, and also leaders who are open to new ideas, and also leaders who created a feeling of succeeding, and the leader would also take a fall for the team. So even when a project failed or somebody failed, there was that belonging and connection among the team. So as we move to our next part of open discussion, we have a question to ponder. A famous Nigerian philanthropist called Toyin Saraki said that personally, she doesn't think you are born to leadership or you are groomed to leadership, or even that you can be trained to leadership. I believe leadership is how you deal with the challenges you are facing in your life and the knowledge that you pick up from the way you deal with it. So as you ponder this, you can see she was not going one way, the way we asked, are leaders born or made? You know, she was saying, you know, learn to deal with the challenges in your life and also the information that you pick up in life. So ponder on this statement as we move on. And then the father of management thinking also reminds us that effective leadership is not about making speeches or being liked. Leadership is often defined by results and not attributes. So this, I think we can also see, for example, in our country right now with the political situation where you may have people with big titles, or you may have these very senior positions, but if you're not delivering on your job, or if you're not working with the team, and not committing to the work you set out to do, then you're not an effective leader. So before we continue, Joanne, please project the second poll. So as we move to the next session, I would like to ask you, what is holding you back from being a leader? This one is multiple choice, so you can answer as many as you want. The answers are the environment. So you may feel that you're in a place, maybe it's your workplace, or it's your home, or a place that you feel is not allowing you to build your leadership skills. Resources can also be a challenge. For example, you don't have enough financial support or technical support. Number 3, you need mentorship. Or number 4, you feel you do not have any role models. So we are going to give you more time. Only half of the people have voted. Almost 100%. So 10 more seconds, and then we close the poll. Joanne, I think we can close. So we can see.
There are the results.
Yes, we have the tie. 55% have said the environment is holding them back. Have said they need mentorship. And also a tie for the last two. 9% say resources are holding them back. That is financial and technical. And 9% also say they lack role models. So we look forward to discussing this and seeing how we can support you. And we shall also share our contact details in the chat box. So over to you, Joanne. Thank you.
Thank you, Akacho, for a wonderful presentation. Thank you for even taking us through what is leadership. It is, you're questioning whether it is made, whether you are made or are you born with it. It's a very good debate right there. There is a school of thought that says it is more nurturing and not being made. I mean, not being born with it. Yes, so asante sana. So we will move to our guest speaker for today, Mr. Don Bosire, who's the co-curator of Engage in Kenya. Some of you may have seen or heard of it. It's a good forum, a wonderful networking forum where there are different people who speak to us on different things in life. So karibu sana, Mr. Don, and I hand it over to you. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. I will start with the standard Zoom question. Can you all hear me? Excellent. This is great. Now, growing up, I was a fat kid, like really fat. You know, I was not slightly obese. I was not like slightly overweight. I was not pudgy. I was a fat kid. I was a fat kid who was aware that he was a fat kid. You know, you can be fat and not aware, and you're just comfortable in your skin. And all through my stages of growing up, if there's one thing that preoccupied my life was the fact that I was a fat kid. So imagine in school, you know, primary school was defined by, and I think most of life, at least for men, was defined by people who are athletic. You know, you had to make the soccer team. You had to make, you know, the guys used to pick, and you know how they used to pick was They just look around and the fat kid gets picked last. Because surely, and that was fair, because if you're selecting a team of guys who need to be athletic and can run around and score goals, surely the fat kid is not going to do that for you because they are fat. But extrapolate that sort of into a sense of what other aspects of your life were not working because you were what? Because you were a fat kid. So I remember in primary school, I fell for a girl, just like many boys did. I don't know what falling in love with a girl in primary school was. I don't even know what I saw in that girl. I don't know what a hot primary school girl looks like. I don't know. But I did because she was hot. Maybe it was the hair. Maybe it's because she was a school prefect and they used to wear these orange belt things. And I don't know, I think she had long hair. But I fell for this girl. And I felt so hard for this girl that even when I went to high school, and this girl went to State House Girls, and I even remember the post office box number, because one of the rites of initiation is when you got to high school, you needed to do what? You needed to have a chick, and you needed to write letters, you know, but then the problem was I did write a letter, but I wrote a letter without having a relationship. So, you know, that a letter should follow a relationship. So I write this letter and I pour my heart out. So the fat kid writes the letter, pours his heart out to this girl. And this girl was in my primary school. So I got to know she was in State House Girls. And then I sent the letter. I remember PO Box 30252. And that was at Lenana was 30253. It was like, it was just made to happen. You know, the way you're like, God, surely this is a sign. And sent the letter, you know. We had gone for some festival. I think it was music or drama or something. It was first term. Wrote the letter, poured out my heart. Let's call the girl Joanne, because Joanne has really such a nice smile. So I told Joanne, hey, Joanne, you know, like you from school. And I think I said things which I shouldn't have said. And then like, you tip man, I waited for a response. The response never came, you know. And I remember one time, and then, you know, when a fat kid does not get a response to a letter, it does not help self-esteem that was already low. So I went through life and I forgot that story. And then life happened. Then fast forward to the era of social media. So now we've been through college, we're working, and many things have happened. So I come across Joanne on social media. And now with the confidence, I think, of having a job, you know, man, we must like have a job or something meaningful to have confidence. So now I reach out, send a message and say, hey, Joanne, and she responds. And to cut that long story short, we end up having lunch. And when we go for lunch, so at the end of it, I ask her, hey, so we have lunch, a good time. Then I asked her, hey, John, but really, that time in high school, when I sent you that letter, why couldn't you just respond? Then she asks, what letter? You know, and I'm like, come on, Joanne, now we're adults, and surely you can tell me you didn't feel it. Is it because I was fat? And now I wasn't fat. I discovered running, I'd become older. Actually, I didn't have fat at all. So Joanne actually told me she had not received the letter, but in many ways, and that is the truth. I don't know what happened. We suspect there's another dude at school who intercepted it because, I don't know, there's many conspiracy theories. But that event, by the way, sort of defined a lot of things about my confidence. It defined a lot of things about my perception right through college. And yet it hadn't happened. And I was thinking of this story as, even as Akacho was talking about leadership and defining leadership. And I find that really, if that definition has to do with inspiring people towards a certain, I don't know, common vision to get things done, you can therefore see why in this country, and I just want to transition very quickly, the reason we find it hard to understand leadership is because leadership wants people to be, requires people to be honest, positive, hardworking, decisive, creative, influential, communicative, empathetic, things we cannot relate to as Kenyans because we don't experience that much. We almost don't experience that at all. So even in this discussion around leadership, and then how do we then become the sort of leaders we are aspiring to be? And I don't know the various levels people are at. And for me, really, very briefly this afternoon, I sort of wanted to share my thoughts that I don't really think that leadership is not nearly as complex as it is. It does not mean that it is easy. I just think there is that one thing that holds us back from becoming leaders. Now, the bunch of us here are not people who haven't been to a class. You have been to a class, you know, leadership qualities, you know, it's good to delegate, it's good to be consultative, it's good to be empathetic. We know all these things. But then what holds us back? And that question that was asked, and I really want to jump there quickly, even as the earlier question, I think by Sandra, was whether these leaders are born or made. I would surely hope that we can all move to this side that leaders are made, because then if they were born, then we are condemned. We said, I think we are damned to a certain fate that we cannot get away from. So imagine if the leader in the organization was born that way. Imagine if you were either born with it, if people were either born, if people were marriage material by birth, that would be unfortunate, right? Then, and imagine you've ended up with the one you married was actually not supposed to be marriage material by birth. You know, it becomes tricky. So my proposition and my suggestion today is, for me, I don't even do the whole research says that leaders are probably 30% born and 70% made. No, for me, leaders are made. For me, all these experiences we have, the reason we get on this platform, the reason we read books, the reason we take classes, the reason we went to school, and the reason we've gotten a master's degree and another qualification is because we've all recognized and realized that, guys, we really do have gaps. And these gaps stem from one thing that I think is most critical in holding us back. So in the answers that were given to what holds us back, I think either Joanne or Akacha read, and I think there was a split between, I think, environment and something else at 55%, and environment, mentorship, resources, and all that. And that is true. It is possible that, yes, you may not have the resources to take that class, to buy that book. You may not live or work in an environment that is facilitative, that props you up. But ultimately, through that experience with that girl that I fell for in primary school and could not express myself to in high school, who through college really left this mark that was debilitating in my life, one of the things then I discovered is really what I call the power of the inner critic. So I really believe that the one thing that is holding us back in this whole nature versus nurture, and if we're to be agreed that indeed it is nurture, that we then need to be able to become better leaders because we are intentional, because we decide to be, because we know we can be, then for me, it is what I call the power of the inner critic. Now, in this country, and maybe it's the only experience I have growing up in this country, we have been raised and socialized to believe that we are not good at anything. We've been raised to be quiet, you know, in your typical home, children were not speaking. Even in a typical home now, in many homes, even spouses, if you're a woman, you know, that voice, you need to lower it. We have not been in an environment whereby we are validated. And because of that, it does not then really matter, and this is my premise, it does not then really matter how well schooled you become, how well improved you become, that ultimately there is that inner critic, there is that inner voice, you know, the one that replays in our heads after every awkward situation, the one where you chat that girl and she doesn't respond and you're there saying, God, you're so stupid, 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 stupid. How could you do that? You know, that kind of thing. Okay, maybe I did it alone when I was younger, but well, you know, I told you I had that problem and I was fat, so it was not very easy to do that. So for a lot of us, whether we're just starting out or we're in our midlife professional careers, there's always this thing that tells a lot of us that we're not good enough. Now, this is not a psychological mambo jumbo. It really is, for me, a reality. It is when you make that presentation and you don't get the feedback that you had hoped for. It is when you want to make that pitch. It is when you apply for that job. It is even when you get that award, but something tells you, no, you are not good enough. To me, that is the thing that holds us back from being the leaders we can become. And sometimes that becoming the better leaders that we know we can become. Sometimes this inner voice, it can be loud and paralyzing. And I know you keep hearing this whole thing about being fat. Believe me, if you've been fat or overweight or obese before, that reality is loud and paralyzing. Yeah, but try, when you are fat or obese, even trying to start working out, you sort of get a sense that you are damned to that situation of obesity that then you cannot move. For a lot of us, there is a sense of a loud, paralyzing voice that sometimes tells us we're not good enough. Now, coupled with the 55% who say environment, so imagine for somebody who is already so critical of themselves, then working in an environment whereby everybody else is critical of you or not facilitative of you, then what happens? We sort of have a recipe for disaster, because then that environment goes ahead to validate our fatness, if I may use that, the fear and anxiety and that thing that we have that tells us that it does not matter how well we have done. Now, for me, truly, the next question then is, how do you get out of that? Is it something you get out of that overnight? And I'm saying, no, you really cannot, because it has taken a long time for us to come to this point whereby we are so self-critical. And for some of us, that's why we try to do more things. We try to get that next qualification just to be better suited for this life, for that work environment, for us to do life in a better way. But as much as some of us end up doing more and more, if we do not get to address that whole element of, but then why are we so critical of ourselves? Yes, in so many ways as leaders, we are validated, but we ignore it. Someone tells you, hey, Samson, great presentation. We somehow ignore it. But we sort of focus on the part of, but maybe you should have added a slide on this, or someone else tells you, I really liked what you did, or I don't know, your employee of the year, or something like that, whatever version of that we get. But as long as we do not get to the point and whereby we realize that the skills we have are valuable, and that through building like what Joanne and Akacho are doing through this network, it is really to sort of give each one of us an opportunity to say, okay, I can become a better leader by communicating better, by engaging better, by being more purposeful in setting out to do these things that I always want to do. It's like the things we do at Toastmasters and all this it's an intentional step that we take to say, okay, one of the things that will help me realize that indeed I'm not as bad as I am is I need to speak better. I need to be able to engage people better. And when I do that, we start getting a reaction that even surprises us. People now, sort of have this, it's like when I spoke to this girl at that lunch, and by the way, guys, I went all out because, when you've been jilted in high school and now you have a little bit of money, you sort of want to be like, I want to show you what you missed out on. So, and when this girl turns around and says, by the way, then she also went ahead and shared that, okay, to cut the long story short, that she also had the hots for me then. But imagine how much time I know that sort of all moment. I feel it even now. So there is something about the intentionality with which then we take steps to address those gaps. And for me, really, why the ability to communicate and to engage is important, and to tell our stories and to share is important, because then it humanizes us. And because I have to bring the connection as to why I was invited here as the co-curator to engage, then what I've come to realize is by empowering people or letting people know that you can share that story to sort of break that chain or grasp it has on your own confidence and your ability to connect to people, then ultimately sort of having that alignment between leadership and how you communicate effectively becomes much simpler, because we start getting the response we need, we start getting the feedback we need, we start sort of seeing the impact of the things we are saying and the things we are doing. So what holds people back is not something that can be resolved. It is really the intentional steps we take to silence this inner critic, to also realize and surround ourselves in environments that actually nurture the leader in us. And that's why I like what these guys are doing with I Am Network. That's why I like what we do at Toastmasters. That's why I like even what we do at Engage, because these are environments that then normalize the vulnerability. They normalize fear. They normalize anxiety, and you have to realize that yes, it is okay to have it, but you can actually get past it. And for us as leaders, just that realization that the more we take steps to overcome to overcome fear and anxiety, things that hold us back, the sooner we get to that point to realize that people actually like us. And I'm using like us really loosely here. People value what we are saying. People are valuing what we are doing. And then that sort of sets in motion what I would call a roller coaster effect, whereby, with validation, we become better at being leaders. Then we go out there more, and we engage our teams more, and we share our ideas more. And then we end up being in that space where we can become better. So yesterday, I was telling my team where I work, I'm in Meru, and I was telling them, and we have a session every morning, I was telling them about the power of being a Kimbelembele. And this is my closing remarks, is that we have been raised in this environment to be told, huyo Joanne Kimbelembele. I didn't know exactly what it meant, but it had negative connotations. It sort of meant, I think, either she's too out there. Then it hit me that maybe sometimes what we defined as a Kimbelembele was just someone who was confident, just someone who was able to speak out, or just somebody who was able to take on tasks. When someone said, hey, who's going to do this? They put up their hand and said, okay, I'll offer the opening prayer. Okay, I will share. Okay, I'll give the vote of thanks. And the others who are afraid to do it step back and say, huyo Joanne Kimbelembele. And then the Kimbelembele went ahead and grew in her career, because Kimbelembelers get noticed. They get noticed because then we start imagining they can speak it, they can think it, they have it in them, and they grew. And us guys in the back office who are quiet, who are working hard, we begrudged the Kimbelembelers. But simply because the Kimbelembelers took time to do what? To be able to cross that path and deal with that sense of an inner critic. So those are my thoughts, and I look forward to the sharing of that. Thanks.
Wow, wow, wow. Well done. Thank you. Thank you. That is a very, how do I say, very profound, and it really resonates with me. I think I have to let guys know that the inner critic does not stop talking despite your age. So don't think that if you're 26, the voice is louder, or if you're 35, the voice is louder, or if you're 40, the inner critic does not stop. I will tell you, like for myself, I am doing coaching. I coach women, and one of the things is displaying your vulnerability. That yes, I have a challenge, coming out and speaking about it. You'd even see a leader and thinking they are okay with just speaking out. Sometimes even they themselves have a challenge. They have probably gone to the mirror and given themselves a word or two about that they can do it, and that it is okay, and that of course it doesn't miss one or two negative naysayers who are going to look for the wrong instead of the right, but it is there. It is there. Thank you, Dawn, for that reminder on being intentional and working on ourselves, finding the environments, whether it's in Toastmasters, whether it's in Engage, whether it's in I Am Network, finding those environments that will help us better ourselves. So thank you very much. I want to open it up a bit for some questions, comments that have come through. I can see Akacho has asked about wewe ni Kimbelembele. So who I know I'm guilty of that one. I have been told mimi ni Kimbelembele kidogo, and of course yes, it does affect. Who else has been in that scenario? Sandra has a comment.
Sandra can comment.
Yes, Sandra.
Yes, John and Akacha. So thank you so much, John. I think that was quite insightful. And thank you for reinforcing something that I had earlier on in the year, in one of these webinars that we've had during COVID, that Kimbelembele huenda mbele. So for so long, especially we women, in some areas we're told we are there to be heard, to be seen and not heard. And then there's this thing of, keep working and let your success work for you. Maze, after many years, I can tell you it's not working. So I'm not ready if the world is ready for the Kimbelembele I'm about to start. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
wow.
maybe I could add to that.
Yes.
I think also as women, we come to accept, should I say, what are the cultural norms? So to Dawn's point where, of course, as small girls, the kitchen is for you. Your brothers would not even be allowed in the kitchen. And I still remember even up to today how we'd run away when visitors come. You know, you are not to be seen anywhere. And I understand what Sandra is saying, because you always knew it was not your place. You are not supposed to talk, you are not to make noise, and you are not to be seen. And that also affects us when we grow older, because you, should I say subdue, or you make it smaller because you are told, you know, you're not even supposed to be, you can't even speak here. You know, this is not your place. And I think many of us struggle with that, because how do you perform if you don't speak? And to your point, I'm sure you've seen that also in interviews or in your team, where the louder people move ahead, whereas you're just quiet and you're thinking your work is showing, but the person who goes and explains what they can do, of course, they're going to get promoted before you. So even for me, in my experience, I have to come out of my comfort zone and take those challenges, because we were even being told, you know, girls can never do sciences. You know, there were those subjects you're told you can never do physics, you can never do maths. So at times you have to be the only girl, should I say, in that, for that season or that time. And it's not easy, because I know many of us have been in that place, but you'll never know if you can be successful if you don't try. So I'm happy you're up for the challenge, and we're here to support you. And 2020 is still our year, so we shall be watching out for you. Thank you.
I just want to say that that I think one of the things that holds us is when we look at certain messages as intended for certain demographic.
Mm-hmm.
So like I teach my children how they need to be more confident. But if someone tells me that, I feel, no, that's not for me, because I think I am there. You know, it's we sort of view, we get a sense, a sufficiency, you know, a self-sufficiency. And sometimes we're in a comfort zone of mediocrity, whereby we are mediocre, but we're comfortable, I think, being right there. And we're just comfortable in, even with how the mediocrity is not working for us. You know, you can go through life, things are not working, and you just find your sort of a comfort zone or a comfort sport, being there. I think being in that position. I think, you know, like the way the Bible talks about how we can learn from children and all that. I think there's a lot that we learn from, I think, taking back to what I call just the simple basics. And now, the thing I also need to say is, it is not an absolute truth that then, if you silence your inner critic, life will just work for you. No, I just think there's many other things we need to factor. We do need to factor some of the things that the team said, an environment, your own, you know, whom have you surrounded yourself around, who's mentoring you, how much are you investing? But for me, the point that's most important is, if you do not deal with, I guess, what I'll call self-doubt, or that voice that keeps telling you cannot sort of do it, or you're not good enough, it does not matter how well you surround yourself with a mentor, because then you move to the next one, or then you move to the next job to be in an environment that appreciates your contribution. But it has to start. And sometimes our ability to be able to silence the voice that tells us that we are not the leaders we plan to be, then helps us to better deal with external stimuli, like where we work, what other people think, or the challenges we face at work. I think that equips us better, because then we have the confidence to either stand up to it, to speak truth to power to it, to refuse it, and to say, no, I shall not, or maybe even to make decisions that then propel us from where we are to the next level in our careers.
Joanne, can you hear?
Okay.
Okay. So we also have a question from Wamboi, who says she has had breakthrough with her kimbelembele attitude since before you were stuck with imposter syndrome. She says she's having a hard time pulling out of this, and I feel my star diminishing. Any advice for her, Don?
Okay, maybe can you rephrase, can you restate that question? From imposter syndrome, I had success, Kimbelembele, then please kindly restate that again. Restate that.
Well, you can unmute, because I'm also not quite understanding.
Esther?
Hello? Wamboi, do you want to phrase your question? Because you're saying you are stuck with an imposter syndrome. She says, I am having a hard time pulling out of this, and I feel my star diminishing. So maybe probably help her with, you know, getting her energy back and her positive attitude. Over to you,
So
Don.
I guess, I don't know. I guess there's, of course, there's a similarity with imposter syndrome whereby we have feelings of inadequacy despite the successes we have in our own lives. You know, success is evident, other people see it, but we have feelings of inadequacy. And with how to deal with that, even as success keeps coming our way, I'm not sure maybe I'm as well equipped to respond, but I'll just give my thoughts. As I said before, maybe it's in identifying what is the root cause of something like an imposter syndrome, feeling of inadequacy. What is the root cause? Once again, I think it's our socialization. It could have been your parents, just with an environment whereby despite how well you did, you know, somebody still thought you could have done better or you are not good enough. And it has been reinforced over time, that you're not good enough. Now, how to get out of that? I guess from a psychological perspective, I think I would be ill-equipped. But what I do know is that I think the more we move out of environments that have really shaped us, into who we are, to what fears we have, or to what limitations we think we have, or the realization that maybe those people who thought were inadequate were projecting their own inadequacies on us, or that they were dealing with their own limitations or with their own issues. I mean, now as a parent, I actually do understand that there's many times either we lash out, say things, do things, simply because of we are trying to deal with our own issues. And those poor children, I think children really grow up in really amazingly limiting environments that then with time, you find that we project these things. So maybe when we start realizing that those people who for a long time thought we're not good enough, but have constantly shaped us to think we are not, that just an effort to separate ourselves. And I guess maybe, and this is not to suggest that anyone feeling like that is unwell, but probably seeking some sort of help if that is something that's so overwhelming. Maybe just having that discussion with somebody, if despite all what I would call low-level efforts to deal with it, you know, surrounding yourself, if it is still something persistent, then I guess it's something that needs to be addressed from a different perspective, especially if it's something that affects our emotional health in a way that paralyzes us from being effective in our workplaces and or in life in general. That to me is what I would say about imposter syndrome. Yeah. I don't know whether that helps at all because I didn't get the question fully. So yeah.
Thank you, Don, for highlighting that. Thank you. I hope we've addressed your question nicely. All right. Any other comment, question?
Esther made a good point about leadership not only being people who stand in the public eye, but even mothers are leaders, teachers, people who are not, should I say, in those traditional roles of being projected on a pedestal.
Okay.
I think to that, Esther,
have I captured properly?
Thank you, Akacho. Yes, I think you have. Sorry, I feel like I have an echo. Okay. No, I think so I can say honestly, as a woman, I feel this pressure to climb the ladder to whatever the top is in my industry, in my community, in my region, or so on. So to gain that title, to say I am leading this thing, this project, this agenda, this initiative, whatever you want to call it. And I think that I personally always have to remind myself that there are different definitions of leadership, and that, you know, I think going back to the characteristics that have been outlined there in terms of ethics and integrity and communication and delegation and how one achieves change is really key to keep at the heart of whatever one is doing. Over.
I think with Esther on the issue about like the example about like being a mother. I mean, I think being a mother is the ultimate is the ultimate leadership, because again, like Esther said, much as we may define leadership differently, there's a confluence. We converge somewhere. Number one is an element of service to other people, that you truly cannot be a leader. People talk about this servant leadership because they're politicians and they want to think that's what they are. But truly, you're not a leader if you don't have followers. Followers need to be inspired to follow you, not hardened, not forced, not coerced. They are inspired to follow you because there's something about you there's something about you that they want to emulate and follow. I think being a mom and being a parent, some of these things is the ultimate show of leadership, because then what your typical mother then does is they sort of give sacrificially of themselves to ensure the well-being of a group of people. And your average mother will do anything for those who, I guess, quote unquote, follow them, those whom they are within the home. So yes, leadership does not have to be public facing necessarily, or maybe we need to determine or define what that public facing would be. I just really think that having said that, there are certain elements to leadership. That means, number one, there must be followers. You're not a leader if no one's following you. You could just be a lone nut or a lone ranger. There must be a follower, because that means you have inspired somebody towards the achievement of that common vision. And by the way, a very good definition of a leader is someone who has followers. And I don't know how many of you have come across the whole, if you watch the TED talk about the first follower, you should look for that, and how really probably that the first follower is probably more important than the leader, because followers follow other followers. It's a very interesting read or watch how then that a lot of us, we have been able to go for concerts, buy clothes, do many things, not because we heard it from the manufacturer, but because someone else followed them, bought it, and then because they did, I guess it's the power of referencing. So yes, again, what Esther said, yes, you can be a leader where you are, and mothers really are a good example.
Wow.
Also highlighted how you talked about when we are so comfortable in mediocrity, even when it is not serving us. And I know many of us are guilty of that, because you just don't want to, should I say, go against the flow. You don't want any conflict, so you're just there. And I think that is where we are now, even in our country. We can see people are not even advocating anymore. Like somebody was asking me, how come these days we don't hear people shouting? You know how we used to hear when things were going wrong? Because we've all become so complacent. And it's sad, but that is where we are. So thank you for the challenge today to come out of mediocrity and our comfort zones. Over to Joanne.
Okay, thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Akacho, for an awesome session. I'm going to share one last slide that talks about the top decision-making challenges that happen. 1 minute. There it is. The 10 most common mistakes while you're making decisions. Okay. So 1 could be waiting for a perfect decision. 2 is failing to face reality. 3 is presenting information with a negative connotation. 4, going with the flow instead of standing up. 5 is rushing to make a decision. 6 is relying on intuition or emotions. 7, only relying on one school of thought instead of being open. I think we had somebody who talked about how we need to be open. It was in Akacho's analysis of leaders, that they are open to receiving other ideas and opinions. Next is there is no plan for the future, working without a plan. There is a saying of failing to plan is planning to fail. Next is looking for approval in the group. You know, sometimes you might not even have one person who's siding with you in that decision that you're making, but you know that that decision is correct. So you need not necessarily wait for the full approval. And finally, not following through on any decision. So you need to take a stand, and when you take a stand, take it and stick with it. Comments or questions around the 10 most common decision-making mistakes? A comment or even a question?
Probably as a leader, could you give an example of how number 3 can be given in a better way? For example, if you are laying off one of your staff, just an example.
Presenting information with a negative connotation, for example, laying off. A good example of that is when I've actually faced such a scenario once upon a time when we had a recession like this in 2008 going to 2009, when there was a global recession happening all around the world. So at that time, wherever I was working, they were laying off some employees. So at that point, it was quite tricky because, of course, management will decide 1 or 2, 3 people are going home. And listening to the team would come back and ask, how was the decision made? How was X person identified as the one to leave? Of course, management does it by checking, of course, things like performance, how are you doing, how do you relate with people and things like that. But it kind of challenged how to handle this involving the team. So we turned it around and now asked the team, this is what the challenge is, and give us the feedback of how you would do this. So of course, a few things is when they saw that it is actually a real scenario where you're comparing financial position and, you know, staff being the largest bill of the business, to being able to make that decision. And, you know, then people became actually more understanding as to where the company is coming from and why they are doing what they are doing, to calling out, you know. And of course, you know, even as you work in an office, you do know there's that one who's a performer, and you know the socialite, or you know the one who's not exactly doing what they are supposed to be doing when they are supposed to be doing it. So even when it came to now following through on the layoffs, it was not really strange. And of course, then the negativity around it kind of died down because they now understood completely from where the company is coming from. So it is possible to communicate even a very negative thing involving the teammates and making decisions that are tough to be made. Yes, like that one was a layoff of people. It's tough to be made, but it has to be made. Yes, so that is how it would be from my experience. Yes, Bernard, your hand is up, Mr. Bernard.
Thank you. I just wanted to, on point number 4, on
Yes.
question of standing out and don't following the flow. I think all of us in our particular age, we have the urge always to challenge. There's an age that we come in our professional life, and every other idea we are likely to challenge, and that is nothing bad, you know. We are trying to explore, discover that particular phase of our careers. But even more importantly, probably as you move into leadership, as opposed to being a manager, is a delicate act of balancing with coming up with the tactics on how you stand out and don't follow the crowd, but at the same time show them that this is the way, so that it does not become out that you are a rebel without a cause, but you are providing alternative leadership in a way that is needed. And you have to be very tactful about that, and that requires you doing a lot of research on alternative paths that you want to take people that has much more value and they could see compared to where they want to go.
Wow.
Very true.
Thank you for those insights. I believe we also need to accept it's not an easy journey, as we've been reminded. And even we're also being told that the journey ahead is not easy, you know. It's not given to the weak, particularly if you want to be a leader, because of course not everybody will agree with you, but you have to stand by your principles. If you remember from the first slide I shared, ethics was a very high rated value. So I believe we also have to stand by our principles, but equally should also be empathetic to members of our team. And also, we've also highlighted the resources available, like the Fast Follower, which is also on TED Talk. And we also read many inspirational books. For example, Don says he loves reading about Gandhi. And for me, I also like reading about Mandela. So you can also pick on a few inspirational leaders. So I believe we're almost closing. So I'll hand over back to Joanne.
Thank you, Akacho, for that good summary. We have another comment from Uloma. She's thanking Dawn for emphasizing the need for one to take steps in overcoming fears and feelings of inadequacy in order to grow. She has struggled with taking up responsibilities because of feelings of inadequacy until she started accepting roles. She realized that she can actually do stuff that she imagined she's capable of. So the inner voice, learning to deal with our inner voices is a very big one, and we need to continually manage that. In as much as also you need to identify the environments within which you are operating in, so that you balance the two. All right. Thank you. I want to thank you all for a wonderful session. Thank you, Dawn, most especially for sparing your time to join us in this discussion on leadership and how to make ourselves the best. Thank you to the team, Samson, Loma, Esther, Wambui, Felicia, Bad, Sandra, Robert. There's Robert Kimani who left a bit earlier. Thank you very much for joining us today's session. And I will close with a quote. Leadership in action. A leader takes people where they want to go. A great leader takes people where they don't necessarily want to go, but they ought to be. That means that you know where you're taking the team, and it might not be that the whole team wants to join you there, but you will be able to guide and nurture the team into going where the team ought to go. So asante sana from myself, from Akacho, and from Madam Paloma. We thank you, and please feel free to like our social media pages, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Like our pages, share, And feel free also to ask for content, whatever content you'd like us to discuss. We do take it. We are driven by you, our followers. Thank you very much.